welcome to Let Them Talk. I'm Paul DiRienzo.
And I'm Miss Joan Marie Musi.
And we have a couple of great guests. We have Judith Malina of the Living Theater, a acting icon and just an all-around important New York City resident and resident of the world. And we have with us also Brad Burgess. Welcome, Brad, who's the assistant director of the play we're going to be talking about, the theatrical production, which is called Korach, which is playing right now at the Living Theater. So, welcome to our show.
Thank you for coming.
And Brad.
And Korach is playing through February at the Living Theater on Clinton Street. So everybody get down and see this production. It is fantastic.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Right, very good. So let's begin by just, Korach, I didn't even know who Korach was. I haven't had the opportunity to see the play yet, but Joni has.
Well, and the subtitle is The Biblical Anarchist.
Right, and Korach has a role. I was told that in the film version of the Ten Commandments story, he's played by Edward G. Robinson. That's that part. And who is Korach exactly?
Korach is the rebel who challenged Moses' authority, no less. No. So he really challenged the top man and the man who wrote the book. And he was swallowed up by the earth for this, but we rescue him so that he can become the ancestors of the psalmists.
Well, I love the way the play was staged. I'd like to talk a little bit about that.
Yes.
Because it's in the round. Is that what you call that?
Yes, it's in the round.
Definitely.
The audience is sitting all the way around the perimeter of the room, and the actors move through different parts of the room. Sometimes they're right next to you. They can be behind you. They can be across the room from you. It's really fascinating. It never stops. The action really never stops in this play.
Well, it begins with the trudge through the desert, and it ends with a general joyous rejoicing.
Now, we always talk at Let 'Em Talk about collaboration, and obviously the Living Theater is a place where collaboration is very, very important. So I'd like to talk a little bit about different people and their roles and the overlapping roles that take place in staging a production like this.
Well, we like to think that the highest form of theater is the collective creation, and to draw all the actors into the directing, into the staging, into the idea. We do a lot of talking, a lot of discussion.
In the development of the piece.
In the development of all our pieces, because I really believe that the ensemble is the only really useful form of theater, and we don't have that much anymore. There are no real ensembles. An actor gets a job, and then he loses the job, and got to look for another job, and go into another company. But we want to develop a company that really has been working together and has been developing together from one play to another, from one year to another.
Well, tell me a little bit about casting, because this is a huge cast. I mean, it's not a cast of thousands, but it's a cast of tens, right?
Mm-hmm.
How many people are in
About
this
25 people.
25 people.
And how do you accumulate 25 actors? Where do you go to find these people?
Where did we get them?
Well, I mean, mostly the people that seem to find you fit well in the plays. You know, we sort of make it known through friends that we're about to do the next project and in the company, and people from the past company come into the fold and maybe recommend other people. And we don't hold like a big casting call. Generally, we don't hold an open call, but somehow people come to us, and if they can do the rehearsal schedule, we pretty much say we'd love to have you. You know.
We don't audition anybody.
Right.
So no auditions.
No.
Now the lead in this particular production.
No, it's the people that belong to us come to us.
Yeah.
They come to us because they belong to us, and we welcome them. And so far, they've always been very good.
Well, and of course, the Living Theater has a long history
Yes.
and an
Judith
incredible
Malina.
level of
Very
respect in the community. And
Yeah, that's what I wanted to ask a little bit about your background. I mean, I want to test out Wikipedia against the facts, because I read about you on Wikipedia, and I know about your work from before that as well, from other sources. But you came to the United States from Germany as a young girl. You came to the United States from Germany
when I
as
was
a young girl.
I don't really remember.
Right.
I was really brought up as a New Yorker.
As a New Yorker, right. So tell me, how did you, from a very young age, recognize that you loved theater?
Well, my mother was an actress, and my mother fell in love with a rabbi, and it was unthinkable at that time that you could be a rabbi's wife and be an actress. Now, you can be a rabbi and be an actress. We've made a little progress. But these two young people at that time decided to come to New York and start a new life and have a daughter who would be a surrogate for my mother's career. So I'm really in the theater because my mother wanted me to be in the theater. I'm not sure she would approve of everything we do in the theater.
I think you've made her proud.
How did you become an anarchist? When did you decide you wanted to be an anarchist?
Well, I did political theater at a very young age. When I was just so high, I used to recite German poetry about the troubles and the horrors that were inflicted on the Jewish children in Germany. And my father was active in trying to stir up the recognition in the American people of what was happening in Germany. And I read these poems about the German Jewish children, and I didn't even realize it was political theater, but it was political theater. So I was destined to be who I am.
And your dad had very activist politics, even as a rabbi, even as being new to New York. The kind of organization that he was doing in the Jewish community was very anarchistic. Started a newspaper, organized the congregation, really helped establish the German Jewish congregation. And while he probably wouldn't have labeled himself an anarchist, I think he was. He kind of was.
Well, how do you define anarchist, Judith Malina?
What?
How do you define anarchist?
Anarchism is a more reasonable way of organizing society. It's a form of organization that doesn't approve of violence, of hierarchy, and it's a kind of very optimistic view that we can organize our lives without punitive law and without these abuses.
Well, wasn't the Living Theater sort of came under attack in the early '60s? I think weren't you pretty much the group forced out of the United States by the McCarthyite period during that witch hunt period?
Not McCarthyism, no.
When we were doing the play The Brig,
yeah.
Which is very critical of the prison of the United States Marine Corps, and criticizing the Marines is a kind of no-no. And all that we showed was the extreme discipline, the extreme rigidity of that form of life. And it was so horrible that in England they wouldn't show a movie of it because they said there was too much violence. There's no violence. Just a punch in the stomach, which isn't really, the worst things that happen.
Did basically, though, you were outside, you left the United States for a number of years after that period?
Oh, yes. We toured for 30 years, up and down Europe and South America and in Korea, all kinds of places.
What did you think about the United States when you returned in the late 60s?
What did you think of the United States when you returned?
In the late 60s.
I thought it was in trouble, and I still think it's in trouble. I think it's got a philosophy of force and sort of that right makes might makes right.
Right.
And it's a bad philosophy, and we're trying to soften it up. And it's a hard road to hew.
Did you consider the Living Theater part of the anti-war movement in the 60s and early? Was it part of the anti-war movement in the 60s and 70s, the Living Theater?
Oh,
Would you consider
certainly.
it?
And still
is,
absolutely, yeah.
Yes. So no, I'm asking because it's an overtly political statement. And
Oh, yes.
Would you say that the plays and the work you do are often or always or some of the time overtly political?
Always.
Always, yeah.
Always.
Now in Korach, just to get back to the current production, you talk about in your director's notes in the program, you talk about a balance between individuality and the group. You talk about the fact that society hasn't found a way to really make that balance work yet.
To understand that balance, and I think the only way it's going to understand it is through education and art, and that's our part of the work, is to make it clear that we don't need punishment, we don't need prisons, we don't need armies, that there are other ways to deal with the social problems of how to get along with each other. And in a way, all of our plays say that from different points of view, from different aspects.
And different particular issues that you focus on for one thing or another.
Yes.
Now you have
The
a
Brig.
film-
You want to talk about the Brig for a moment?
Yes,
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Sure. I mean, the Brig is probably the clearest anti-war piece, that it's a direct confrontation of the military. And I think one thing that the Brig, and just being this slice of reality piece, it carries a lot of weight. It carries a very powerful punch because we're just showing what's going on. It's not an exaggeration. It's not
not dramatizing it.
No, it's just this is what goes on in a Brig. You know, if you talk to somebody, the man who wrote it, Ken Brown, wrote it based on his experiences in the Brig, and it's not a script even. You know, it's the routine of what happens and learning that routine as a Marine. And it exposes an incredible amount about that mentality and that might makes right mentality that sort of, it permeates everything. It is the baseline of every form of organization. And what we try to suggest with anarchism is that we don't need that in order to administrate and organize ourselves. You know, you can be just as disciplined in being anarchist as being just as disciplined in being a Marine. You know, you really can be. You really can learn a lot from that form of discipline.
President
Korach-
Obama is going to be giving the State of the Union address. If you were the speechwriter, Judith Malina, what would you ask President Obama to tell the nation tonight?
I don't pay too much attention to those people. I think they're on the wrong track. And I do lump Obama in with all the other political figures of our time.
Mm-hmm.
They're all trying to make an unworkable system work, and sometimes it leads to horrors like fascism, and sometimes it's more beneficent, but it isn't going to make the change that we need. And that's what we're looking for, is a change in attitude about who we are to each other and what we mean to each other and how we should treat each other as human beings.
Let me ask another technical question about acting. You've been in movies. I mean, you have a movie career. We haven't touched on that. And can you tell us about what's it like to star and to act in a movie as compared to a play? Is it similar, different, and how did you find it?
It's a very different thing. In a movie, you get your script and they do 1 minute of time in a day. And you've got to know your lines for that minute. And in the theater, you have your script and you study it and you discuss it with the director and you discuss the meaning of it, sometimes with the playwright and with the cast, and then you begin to work on it. And when you know all the moves and you know all the action and all the words, then you really begin to develop the role. In the movies, you get on the stage and you on the set, and you only want one thing. You want the director to say, "Great, print it." And you're just waiting for that. And then you never see it again, and you never touch it again, and it's all over. So it's a very different process of artistic development.
What was your of your movies? Which that you acted in? Which one is your favorite? Do you have a favorite role?
Well, I like Dog Day Afternoon very much.
Tell me about that role.
With Al Pacino.
Al Pacino.
You were Al
played
Pacino's
the bank
mother.
robber.
Right.
And he mistakenly thinks he can save his romantic love situation by robbing a bank. And I play his mother, who feels totally sympathetic with him, but can't help him. And it's a tragic story, but it's very much a political story. And when he robs the bank, there was a great improvisation moment when Al Pacino cried out, "Attica! Attica!" And the whole crowd of extras plus onlookers shouted back, "Attica! Attica!" And the political implication.
They kept that in the movie for folks who haven't
Oh,
seen
it's a
it.
No, it's in
fantastic
there.
scene.
Part of
yeah.
the movie.
Part of the movie.
And to keep it in the movie and not see it as, oh, somebody messed up my shot. You
No,
know,
no,
that
no,
was a
it's in the
brilliant-
movie.
I know.
It's an important part of the movie.
Absolutely, absolutely. What about,
And do you still know Al Pacino?
Oh, yes. Yes, we saw him, a couple of weeks ago?
Uh-huh.
And we're good friends, and he supports the Living Theater a little bit, and I
Right,
hope we'll
excellent.
support it even more.
Well, let's just mention again that the name of the piece that's playing now at the Living Theater is Korach. It's on Clinton Street.
21 Clinton Street.
21 Clinton between Houston and Stanton. It's every night of the week at 8.
No,
Wednesday through Saturday
Wednesday
at 8.
through
Wednesdays
Saturday
through
at 8.
Saturdays nights.
And get out and see it.
and
because
where can
it's a
people find out more
fantastic
information?
place.
Is there a website or
Livingtheater.org.
livingtheater.org?
And Wednesday night is Pay What You Can night, and then reservations the rest of the week. And we're actually thinking of instituting a program we're talking about called Tickets for Good Deeds.
Oh, that's a great idea.
I think we're going
like
to
it.
start that up, have people
Very
take
good.
little videos of their good deeds and send it in if they want to come see the play on nights where it costs more money than the Pay What You Can night.
Now, the question I wanted to ask is another movie question. What about the role of Grandma in the Addams Family, and what happened after? How come you were not invited back for the sequel? I've heard a lot of stories about that. I'd like to hear it from you.
Oh, I won't tell you why I wasn't invited back,
Oh,
but it too is about social rebellion. It's about a family that won't conform, doesn't want to conform, and opposes the whole social structure, and in a comedic way gets away with it. And one even has a certain affection for them, though one wouldn't want one's children to emulate them.
we actually did have somebody who ate a light bulb. They didn't light it up, but they ate it on our, right here where you're sitting. Now, that was our theater, our attempt at theater. Okay, great. Now, let's get back to plays, the theater, and to the Living Theater and the wonderful work you've done. Tell us more about how the Living Theater came to be and why it came to be and what its original founding purposes were.
Well, I was a student of Erwin Piscator, a wonderful German director. I have just written a book about him and his incredible contribution to the theater, because he was the director that worked with the playwright Bertolt Brecht, and together they invented modern political theater. So I feel that everything I do is a step forward in Piscata's work in trying to make the theater have a real function in political and human life.
Now, didn't Mr. Piscata, didn't he go to the Soviet Union, and wasn't he, didn't he
Paul,
escape,
you need to
didn't he
speak
escape
up.
to Russia and to the Soviet Union in the 1930s?
Yes, he did.
And it was that, several anarchists went to the Soviet Union and were turned off, to say the least. How did he react to that experience?
He was kicked out. He was kicked out. And he was rather bitter about it. But it was certainly, it was part of the hope at that time that something good could happen. But of course, we anarchists
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
have a great difference with the political philosophy of the communists, although we're all on the left.
Interesting. Joni, any?
Well, I wanted to talk some more about Korach because I was interested also. It's a multimedia production. It's not just live acting. You act in the piece, but in a video
In a
part
video,
of it. Yes.
I play Emma Goldman on a screen where I do just what he says. I make a little lecture about what anarchism means and why Moses, way back in biblical times, had to destroy the dissident Korach. And then we have films of how the anarchists of Barcelona had to be destroyed, and the anarchists of Ukraine had to be destroyed, and we show how these two groups were destroyed for their anarchism, with a fascist and a communist using the same words that Moses uses, that you cannot make a state if you're going to have dissidents. You've got to get rid of the dissidents. And this tragic reality is one of the things that we're trying to talk about.
Mm-hmm.
I thought it was so brilliant the way you juxtaposed the two time periods, to having the biblical times and then the anarchism and the Emma Goldman, and I just thought that was so wonderfully done. How did you get to the point of understanding where to put what? I mean, that's such an amazing feat.
That's
really.
the most fun part of the collective process, too, is that we don't always know the answer to that going in. And we oftentimes reshuffle things, reorganize things.
So wait, this should come sooner.
Right. Judith will write sometimes a very skeletal script for the work, and then we'll pass it out, and it will grow and double in size by the time we open. And that's pretty much how this play happened, too. And we had great ensemble direction by Carlo Altomare, and we had wonderful musical composers. Carlo composed some with Steve Taylor, also, of the Fugs. And
what about the actual staging, the blocking of the play, the choreography? I guess you would really call it choreography, right? To try
Yes.
to keep all of those people.
All of those people played a creative role, each one, in staging the play.
What a fantastic experience.
This is a very
we had,
important thing for us.
some great living theater veterans in there to help too, like Tom Walker and Sheila Dabney, that really just know the
Jerry
work.
Goralnik.
And Jerry Goralnik.
I better
as
mention
Korach,
Jerry Goralnik,
who plays
the
Korach.
title role.
And so, with those people there, it's like a choreography that comes from the living theater technique that they're passing on to a lot of the new folks that are there and wanting to get more and more integrated into the work. And we create it very collectively, and somebody will throw out an idea and we'll try it. And it's like we were talking about at the beginning. It really is collective. Everybody is encouraged to take the directorial mindset in the process. And luckily we have Judith there that kind of guides us all while we work together.
Now, at what stage did you decide to use the projections and the Emma Goldman and the...
Well,
Pretty early.
yeah, pretty early on, and since we've had that ability in the space, we've looked to include it in most of our plays, and a lot of that comes from Piscator too. Piscator was all about total theater, epic theater. He used some of the original projections that were used in the theater. I think some huge, big projection stuff that he did in some of his works, and we try to include as much multimedia in the pieces as we can because it's very modern. You know, people like watching
It's
video.
fun, yeah, it really is.
Shakes up the pace a little bit.
Now, what about reviews? Do you read them or no?
Yeah.
Yes, we read them. I don't like to read them, but I read them. We've gotten pretty good reviews for this play.
The New York Times reviewed it. I hope.
Pretty
Times
good.
is a pretty good review. Definitely brings people. The New Yorker put a little blurb in it, and it's not always positive.
And
And
let's remind people before the show's over, because we just have a couple minutes left, that it's 21 Clinton Street. It's between Houston and Stanton. It's a living theater, Wednesday through
Saturday, 8 p.m.
8 p.m.
And
Definitely see it.
And you can
Come
go to the
see it.
net to
.org.
livingtheater.org. All right, we have a couple of minutes, a minute and a half. I don't know where we're going to sum up. There's so much there in a life.
Yeah, we need to have you back. I hope you
Yes, we have to
consider
finish.
that.
Sure,
Right.
absolutely.
Tell us, in the last minute or so, what message you want folks to come away with from this program with? Judith Malina, Brad Burgess, who's the assistant director of the play, and I'm Paul DiRienzo, Joni Musi. This is Let Them Talk. But go ahead, Judith.
Paul just wanted you to wrap up in the last minute about what you want people to see in this play, why it's important for them to come.
I think it's important because of the participatory role that the audience plays
Yeah, something we haven't even discussed.
in this play. And we're already beginning to think about our next play. I'm not ready to announce it, but I'd love to come back and talk about our next
Yeah.
play.
Oh, definitely.
We're already starting to work on it because, as I said, our company likes to keep developing and keep working. And this is the important part of it.
That's right.
And I
see
think
Korach.
our audience helps with that too. We have a core audience that keeps coming and giving us its feedback
Yeah.
and its
Like
input
yourself.
and teaching us
And
what we
Korach
should
is
do.
on through the end of February.
Yes.
So definitely see it. And
21
thank you so
Clinton
much,
Street.
Judith Malina, Brad Burgess from the Living
Thank you,
Theater.
Janet.
Thank you. We'll see you
Thank
next
you.
week. Thank you very
Thank you.
much.